Larry, I think the whole issue with Charlie Kirk's assassination is the way that the government or FBI put out the details of the assassination, as you've mentioned. And here is what Cash Patel said on Megyn Kelly's show about the case of the assassination.
Let me start with this, the most obvious. Do you believe that we have the proper suspect in custody? Do you believe that Tyler Robinson is, in fact, the man who killed Charlie Kirk?
Yes.
Do you believe he acted with the help of anyone else?
This investigation is being led by the Utah state authorities because it is a murder investigation. So the FBI is a supporting role in the investigative process. And so what we're doing is the same thing we did in the pipe bomb investigation. The investigation is ongoing for us. If there's any new leads or tips, we are exhausting them with search warrants and legal process. But at the same time, we are working with the prosecutors in Utah to make sure we don't screw up their investigation. Because again, the worst outcome would be if the guy that killed Charlie Kirk walks out of a United States courtroom in the state of Utah. And so it's a delicate balance again, but there is no way this FBI is going to stop that investigation until it reaches its all-conclusive endpoint.
Yeah, okay. Does it make sense? He equates this with the pipe bomber. Excuse me, the pipe bomber is a federal crime. It falls under the jurisdiction of the United States. As he said, this was a murder. Utah's got the lead. Right. And FBI's got a, quote, supporting role. For what? I mean, if the story is, if it's Tyler Robinson, Cash Patel just needs to shut the hell up and move along. It's not his business. Because the FBI, if the story as they tell it is true, the FBI has zero role to play. And the fact that the FBI was putting out a lot of the information about to pin the guilt on Tyler Robinson, I'll make this bold prediction. If this goes to trial, Tyler Robinson will walk clean, walk free, because there's video evidence that disputes the government's account. If nothing else, just what the kind of wound that is caused by a .30-06 can be replicated over and over and over. That's not what hit Charlie in the throat. That's not what killed him. I do not know what kind of, it was a supersonic round. It entered his neck. And I believe what we see visually is his reaction, the poofing of the shirt out, and then this immediate dump of blood. But you don't see the squirting that is associated with an arterial bleed. If the carotid artery is cut, if anyone's ever shot a squirt gun, you press the squirt and the spray comes out. That's what happens when you cut a carotid. It'll keep spraying until the person bleeds out. Well, that's not what we see on the video. So I always maintain we've got to go with what the video evidence is. And what you get is an immediate dump of blood. The only logical explanation I can come up with is that when that bullet entered the throat, it brings what they call cavitation. It's like shock waves. And those shock waves were sufficient that they severed the ascending aortic artery. And because that ascending aortic artery goes up and then it supplies the carotid and there's all this blood in the head. When that was severed, that stopped pumping blood to the head. And then what we see rush out of Charlie's neck is basically the blood that was in his head. So that's what we see. That wasn't caused by a .30-06. But we come back. Why did the FBI jump into this immediately and then start basically helping shape the narrative? I regret to say that I had supported Cash Patel for becoming FBI director. He's a disaster. He's as bad as Christopher Wray, only in a different way, apart from being, incompetent and not having the kind of judgment and maturity that you need with somebody who should be heading up the FBI. And he's too politicized. That was a problem with Christopher Wray. That was a problem with Robert Mueller. Got to get the damn politics out of law enforcement. Uphold the law. Be blind justice. But that's not what they're doing.
The other thing, Larry, is that we have no information about the body of Charlie Kirk, autopsy, these sort of investigation to see what really happened,
Yeah.
as you mentioned it. Why are they so hesitant to put out this sort of information? I don't know if if they did the autopsy on the body of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, but reportedly they did. And, I guess the autopsy results could be released if Erica Kirk insisted on it. But, I don't see that as critical evidence for trial, but that may be one explanation. They want to keep it hidden until the trial of Tyler Robinson. But, again, I think that'll be a complete joke. But because what they're going to find out is that there's enough reasonable doubt to that it'll be impossible to convict Tyler Robinson.
Larry, you think that because they're talking about Taylor Robinson being on the top of one of the buildings,
Right.
close to the event, they had on the campus. But from that distance, who's going to believe that, if someone gets shot from that distance with the rifle they're talking about, that would be the same? Do you think that the guy who assassinated Charlie Kirk was closer to him in the crowd?
No, I don't think that. I don't think it was somebody in the crowd, because people would have reacted, because we heard the gunshot. So it's not like somebody was shooting a suppressed firearm in the crowd. Even with what is popularly known as a silencer, it's actually a suppressor. It suppresses the sound, but doesn't eliminate it. But we heard a loud crack associated with what would be a round traveling above the speed of sound. We haven't really had a good explanation of what was the weapon used. We're told it was a Mauser, that it was an older style. I'd want to know what the optic was. So, a shot at that distance is not an impossible shot. But, you got to step back and realize that if the story is that Tyler Robinson knew that Charlie Kirk was going to be there that day, and so he showed up with his rifle, found his way to the top of that roof, doesn't make sense. If you're going to carry out an assassination and you're going to be shooting a rifle number one, you have to know beforehand, what is the distance to target? Because, this, what they call zeroing an optic. When you look through the optic, one of the things that shooters go through is they have to make adjustments. And so the optic allows you to adjust for what's called elevation, up and down, and windage, right to left. And, normally you'll start out, with, if you want a rifle to be effective at, say, out to like 300 yards, you may zero it at, say, 50 yards, or at 100 yards, and what that means is when you put the crosshairs, so when you look through a scope, you'll see what looks like a little cross, and you put those crosshairs where you want to hit, and you fire at the target. And then, using like a good pair of binoculars, you look through and you see, were you on target, or were you high? Were you low? Were you to the right? Were you to the left? And so depending upon where your round goes, you make the adjustments on the scope until you get to a point that when you put the crosshairs on the center of the target, you're hitting the center of the target. That's what it means to zero a firearm. Well, the zero changes based on distance. So where you hold the crosshairs if you're shooting at 25 yards is different from where you hold the crosshairs at 100 yards, or in this case, 140 yards. So that means you have to make some preparation. And specifically, how do you know where you're going to set up? So this wasn't just some kid grabbing his rifle and then happy, hey, I find a spot up here on the roof. We'll go from here. Because at that point, unless you're a really experienced shooter, you're not going to be sure about, the adjustments you need to make on the scope in order to hit an accurate shot. So whoever shot and killed Charlie had done done reconnaissance at the site beforehand. And they had information about really where Charlie was going to be sitting. And so then they could actually figure out what the distance was from point A to where Charlie was. You can use a rangefinder that in golf. You can use that to, basically get an idea of the distance. But see, that's what people aren't understanding. Because again, with the way the story's told, kid grabbed his grandpa's weapon. I'm upset. He's been insulting my she girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. My furry friend. And he was going to kill Charlie Kirk over that. I'm not buying it. It's just, Tyler Robinson doesn't come across as the kind of kid that was an expert, what they call bench rest shooter, someone who shoots from a distance.
Yeah.
It just too many questions.
Exactly. Yeah. Too many.